We're locked in, we're ready to go. How's it going, everybody? My name is John Bianchi. I'm the Airbnb data guy. If you're watching this video, it's because you've come to learn a little bit more about me, about who I am, how I got to this point, and I am going to tell you the full story. I am currently the head of data for a short-term rental investment fund that is called Superhost Labs. They've raised $16 million in the past 10 months, bought about 45 properties, and they're in 9 different markets across the United States, which is wild if you think about it, and I'm in charge of all of the data. It is my job to figure out where the most profitable Airbnbs are across the entire United States for one of the largest short-term rental investment funds in the entire United States. But I want to give you my whole story as to how I got to this point. I'm going to break this down in for you, whereas this is where I am right now, this is how I got to that point, and this is where I'm going. I want to share my story as I continue throughout the years to improve myself within the Airbnb space and eventually get to that point where I do have the financial freedom. I'm currently not there yet, but if you're watching this, you're going to follow along with that journey. Let's start off with where I'm at right now. Yes, I am the head of data. However, I also have an Airbnb data consulting company. I work with people and I consult them on all of the data to help them figure out where the most profitable Airbnbs are across the entire United States. That company became a company out of happenstance. It literally just happened because so many people got referred to me that I was like, maybe I should make some money off of this, right? Maybe I should figure out a way to turn this into something. The reason so many people would reach out to me was because of something else I had tried earlier. I created a course about Airbnb data and how to use AirDNA to figure out where the most profitable spots are in your market. I created this course, I didn't know how to sell it, and so what I did was I took that course and I put it onto YouTube for free. If anyone wanted to watch it, go for it. I just didn't want it to go to waste. It got so many views and so many people realized that I knew what I was talking about and I understood Airbnb data better than like 99% of the people that are out there, and they all started reaching out to me for consulting. So at this moment, I have my own Airbnb data consulting company called Point Analytics. I also have 2 free courses on YouTube that teach you everything and anything about Airbnb data. One is completely free, you can do it all on your own. The other one, you got to come through me and consult to get the reports that are needed for it to be useful. But I also have a bunch of other content on YouTube as well. I just happened to hit 11,000 followers on TikTok, which is kind of cool. That's where I'm at right now. How do you get to the point where you can be considered the expert on Airbnb data? It's just so niche, it's not even funny. And maybe my all over the place story will help you realize that it kind of can be all over the place and eventually come together. And I fully expect my future to be all over the place and continue to be all over the place as it continues to go. So let's go back to the start. I used to be a financial advisor. I had $10 million that I managed of other people's money. And it was my job to take, people's retirement money, figure out how to invest it into mutual funds and ensure that they were, saving as much taxes as they possibly could, all that fun stuff. Let's not get into that too much. When I was doing that, I realized that I really hated it. I had an assistant, I had my name on the door, I had a business partner, I managed $10 million, I was 24 years old, and I did not care for it. I was looking for an alternative thing that I could do. And what I landed on was actually Airbnb, solely because I had an extra spare room in my apartment, and I was like, I'm gonna give this Airbnb thing a shot. I did it so wrong that within the first 2 weeks, I had to move back in with my parents because I rented out my entire house. And I just didn't want to get a bad Airbnb review. So I was like, I'm just gonna leave. You guys can have my house. And then eventually I was able to start renting out that individual room. What ended up happening was I paid for all of my rent with the amount of money I was making from that spare room, which to me was like, it wasn't a crazy amount of money, but at the same time, it covered all my rent. Like, how cool is that, right? And so I was like, what if you could do more with this? And I'm sort of one of those guys who can kind of geek out on something and get really deep into it, hence the Airbnb data guy, right? And so what I decided to do was start reading articles. And I call this my Google education. I literally read articles and articles and articles on Airbnb in general just to learn more about what was going on in this space. And what I found out was that people were actually creating businesses out of Airbnbs. Like, they would just keep getting more and more Airbnbs. Because for myself, I had this one spare room and it was making me a decent amount of money. I was like, what if I had 100? But what really kicked it off for me was AirDNA. AirDNA is a site out there that exists that has all of the Airbnb data in the world, and it's brought it all together in these dashboards. And in these dashboards, you're able to see exactly how much everybody is making off of their Airbnb. And what really tipped it off for me was I came across this one host who had like 60 locations out near Yosemite, and there were all these beautiful, beautiful cabins, but he was making like over $100,000 on every single one of them. And I was like, this guy's making about $6 million a year. Just overnight, like, blew my mind. I was like, sold. I'm sold. Let's do it. Let's figure it out. I want to get into this Airbnb game. I want to make it happen, right? What I ended up doing was opening up a couple of locations using rental arbitrage. I'm not going to get into it. There's tons of videos that explain what rental arbitrage is. And then I sold my finance business, right? Because I had that at the time. I was still managing these $10 million while I was researching all this because I knew I wanted out. But I got to the point where I eventually raised some money and I was able to go and open up more locations, and I knew I could walk away from my current job. So I didn't leave my current business until I knew I could continue to scale the Airbnb thing that I was working on. And so I was able to take that money. I went to Florida. Actually, I'm going to give you the long story here. So I went to Florida, completely failed. I thought Florida was the place to be for when I was trying to do it. I could not figure it out. I traveled around to like 7 different cities within 1 month. I almost completely lived out of my car during that time period, just trying to make this work. But I eventually got to Chicago. But within the first 2 weeks, I was able to secure 4 rental arbitrage contracts. And it took me 2 months to get those 4 up and running. And once they were up and running, it was game over from there on out. Game over in a good way is what I'm trying to get at. I knew this was going to work because when those first 4 opened, they covered all of their expenses within the first like week or 2 of being rented. Now, hindsight's 2020. I realized that I actually was doing bad bookings at the time, but you know, I was just getting started. So like, give me a break. So I opened up like a handful of other rental arbitrage properties. And once I got to a certain point, I was like, okay, let's actually get to opening up management contracts. So I started finding other people's properties and managing the contracts for them because I had all the systems and operations. I had 15 locations and half were arbitrage, half were management. Things were going great. I also had my own cleaning company. I was happy with it. We were about to go into the summer of 2020 and make about $200,000 of pure profit. It was really exciting. COVID hit, smashed everything. All my bookings were gone overnight. And so I took all of those contracts and I sold them to somebody else. I sold my business, right? If you're gonna sell your business, make goddamn sure that you have a business broker if you've never done it yourself, because it went horribly. I feel terrible for the way it went down. I feel terrible for my investors and how it all worked out. Anyways, that's a whole other story I can get into another day. Fast forward, right? I sold my business. Then I create this course I think I'm gonna sell, put it onto YouTube. On YouTube, it gets a bunch of traction, turns into this Airbnb consulting business. From the consulting business, I end up reaching out to these short-term rental investment fund that has, all of these properties and they're doing really well. And they take me on as the head of data for their short-term rental investment funds. I raised $250,000 when I first got started. The only reason I was able to do that was because the data existed, right? It was that data that told me, hey, if I can figure out how much these homes are gonna make, then I can figure out how much profit I'm gonna make, then I can figure out how much money I'm gonna be able to raise. There's a chance that I can raise that money, go and do it, give them a cut, keep the rest for myself, and continue to grow. But the thing is, the data is super confusing. If you've gone onto AirDNA, 90% of that data is inaccurate. The vast majority of it is completely useless. And there's a sliver of it that's actually helpful. And so what I did was I studied this data. I learned it. I learned what was good data. I learned what was bad data. And eventually what happened was I created a process. I created a step-by-step guide, and I used this one line of logic. It's called the Burger King logic. So McDonald's spends millions of dollars to figure out what corner to be on, and Burger King opens up across the street. And so what I thought was, I'm gonna do the same thing with Airbnb. I'm gonna find all the people who are absolutely killing it, and I'm gonna replicate the exact same home that they have. If they have a 4-bedroom with 3 baths and they have a really cool design, and they also have a backyard and maybe a patio, then I'm gonna find a home that matches all of those things as well, and I'm going to make it just as nice, if not better, so I can secure that I'll do more than them. And I was able to go through the data and find those trends, and then I would go out and hunt those homes. If I could find the most profitable Airbnb in a city, I only needed one to make the same amount as the other person who was getting like 3 Airbnb properties and dealing with 3 times the amount of guests. Once I created that course and taught everybody, then everyone started to come to me, and then I had to really make sure I had it right to ensure that what I was saying to them was actually accurate. And now that I'm working as the head of data, I'm honestly getting even better at it in comparison to what I was, 3-4 years ago, just to wrap that all up. I've been doing this for 5 years. I opened up, 15 homes in Chicago. Then everyone came to me for consulting, which made me even get better at understanding the data. And then eventually that led to me getting to the point where I have a consulting company, and I also am the head of data for a short-term rental investment fund. Where do you go from here, right? Now, I had my business, I sold my business. One of my few regrets in life is actually selling that business. At the time, it felt like the right thing to do. Now, all I want is I want to get my properties back. I want my babies back, you know what I mean? This time around, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna open up Airbnbs again, but I'm not going to rent them, just simply because I'm thinking for the next 20 years of my life how I want it to work out, and rental arbitrage is just not it for me. I wanna buy as many homes as I can, and I wanna go and find the most profitable Airbnbs across the entire United States, and I want to run them for the next 20, 30 years of my entire life and just have them cash flow for me. And eventually I wanna get to a portfolio that's so nice that I can retire off of it, where I can hire somebody to run all of the properties, give them a really great salary so that I don't have to do the day-to-day work, and then I can continue to pay myself. Now that's one of my goals. And if you are watching this and you're intrigued by it, you like my story, you like who I am, you've seen my other videos, you trust me, I hope you trust me because this is my whole job, reach out to me and we can talk about doing joint ventures together. I'm very, very open to that. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm also working on a software. There's a little secret that I'm releasing right now. It's not fully there yet, but I promise you this is happening. I just got confirmation as of yesterday that I now have access to all of the data in the world, which which is the most exciting thing for me because I've wanted that for so long. And so I'm creating a software that's gonna allow for people to really dive into the nitty-gritty. You can ensure that the Airbnb that you're gonna get is going to make X amount of money. You know that the place that you're going to get has a backyard, has 4 bedrooms, has 3 baths, has a rooftop patio. If you have all of those things, then you know for a fact that you'll make $150,000 a year. If you're missing the rooftop patio, you're gonna make $125,000 a year. And if you know that and you can still do it, you're good to go. That's what my software is going to try and solve for you guys so that you can ensure and feel super confident when you're actually going out to purchase this property. There's gonna be a lot of legwork behind the scenes to get to that point, but I'm super excited about it. This is another thing that I'm just letting very naturally scale and grow over time, to kind of figuring out exactly what customers want so you don't have to try and figure it out for yourself. If you wanna follow along, hit subscribe, hit like. I wanna help out as many people as I possibly can to ensure that they're understanding the data properly to get the best property. My whole thing is ensuring that nobody rents or buys a bad property ever again that's not going to cash flow for them. The amount of people that have rented a home that would never cash flow for them and they thought they're going to make a bunch of money as Airbnb and doing rental arbitrage is through the roof. The amount of people I've talked to is it's insane, and nobody ever talks about it because you can avoid this mistake by just understanding the data. And I hope that you take it in. Let's get going. I apologize for swearing if you're watching this and you're a kid or a parent, you have your kids in the room. I apologize. I'm just excited. Let's do this. Let's get going. I don't know where we're going, but we're going, and we're gonna go together, and it's gonna be fun. So like and subscribe. Let's make this happen.